Hello fellow cinephiles. With the lead up to Yorgos Lanthimos' new film, The Favourite, I've decided to go back and review the first three films that really threw him into the limelight. The main three films I'll be focusing on will be Dogtooth, The Lobster and Killing a Sacred Deer. So I'm going to start with Dogtooth. Now this came out in 2009 and is a foreign film. Now it's quite a surprising film. And it did quite well at the Cannes Film Festival. It was sort of the first time everyone really got to see Yorgos. He had done two other films in Greece previous to that, but this was his first sort of film that really was starting to encapsulate who he was as a filmmaker, I think. And it's a very interesting film, and it stars Michelle Valley. It's really the story of taking parenting to the extreme. It really looks at this husband and wife, and the extremes they go to about keeping their children safe. They're worried that their children will be contaminated by the outside world. And they ultimately ban their children from leaving the isolated country, estate that they live in. The parents ultimately feed their children false meanings of words, such as zombie meaning yellow white flower and sea meaning leather armchair. The only interaction that the teenage kids have is with each other and their parents. No one's allowed to come to the house, and they're not allowed to go outside the walls. They're not allowed to leave the house until their dog tooth or their canine teeth grows longer than the other one, and then they're able to leave. And only then, when that tooth falls out, they're able to learn how to drive. They're only allowed to watch home movies and no other films about the outside world. And they frighten them in compliance with tales of disobedience. And it really looks at this sort of family and the extremes that these parents will go to keep their children, what they call keep their children safe. The only person who's able to go to the house is a female security guard who works with the father, and he ultimately pays her to come back and sleep with his son. And she interacts with the son and the two other daughters as well. She starts to talk about bringing things into the family that they've never heard or known about before, and it causes them to ask questions. And one of the particular daughters ultimately wants to know what's going on, wants to leave, wants to get away from what's going on and to go out into the open world, and the extremes that she goes to in order to accomplish that. It's quite shocking and surprising, and it all leads to a very interesting and sort of shocking ending. This film was interesting. There was something about this that was kind of captivating, even though it was dealing with quite extreme subject matters and themes. I quite enjoyed my experience with this, even though it was kind of confronting. It's not a film for the weak of heart. There's something quite powerful about this film, but there are disturbing moments in it. It deals with a lot of themes. It deals with sexuality, parenting, violence, and what we do to our children and how that affects them as they grow up. And it's all from a place of wanting to keep them safe, but how safe can you keep your children, really? There are violent moments in this, but each violent moment that happens contributes to the story in some way. So it's not just some random violence for the sake of violence. It serves a purpose, even though it is kind of confronting and shocking when it does transpire and does happen on screen. There is a purpose and point. There is a point and purpose to it. There's a lot of sexual content in this as well, and it starts, as you watch it, you start to wonder if this is them really acting or if they're actually involved in what they're doing, because it's hard to know the difference. It has a real Larry Clark vibe, who'd done a lot of controversial films, namely Kids, dealing with particular sexuality and extreme circumstances that young teenagers find themselves in. And this film sort of feels vibes of that. There's a feeling of that within it. It sort of reminds me of David Lynch as well, a little bit. Like there's a darkness just under the surface. You're not quite sure what's going to happen from one scene to the next, and how the story arc is going to chop and change as we go along. Ultimately, it's just these three teenagers at home, and the way they entertain themselves is come up with games, and it's only interacting with each one of them and this one particular female security guard named Christine, who comes and visits them from time to time. She's the only other interaction that they have with other people outside of the home. There's things that transpire in this film that are quite surprising in ways, and the levels that the parents go to keep the kids there. Like there's an incident with a cat that appears, and the extremes that the father goes to talk about the cat and not leave the compound, not leave the estate, because they will be killed by giant cats. Things like that. It's kind of very interesting what they say is going to happen to keep these kids in order, I suppose. We do find out through the film there was another child that sort of left and disappeared, and no one really knows what happened, and they didn't really explain that to the children, I don't think. It asks some really interesting questions, I think. Yes, it is an extreme version of trying to keep your children safe and keep them at home and sort of lie to them in a way to keep them where they are. They're very highly intelligent kids. They've learned a lot. They know CPR, they know medical information. There's a lot of stuff that they're well versed in. And it makes you wonder if this is detrimental to the child's well-being and their growth. Like keeping them captive in this and not exposing them to the outside world. Is it a positive or a negative? Yes, this film works outside society, but who's to say society is right or wrong? And these are the questions that arises. It's a very moral-driven film in a way. If you think what they're doing is extreme, is it any different to the extremeness that some parents have within society as well? It's kind of interesting sort of film and asks a lot of questions. There's a lot of themes as usual that Yorgos goes into, and I think he does a really great job here. He has particular shots that he uses that is ultimately just set up in one, like the camera's set up and then the scene takes place within that. And sometimes it's only shot on one complete person. With this film, he hadn't used the camera quite yet. It's very artistic and very different the way he shoots and puts things together and the way he cuts things together and the scenes that unfold from that. You could really tell he was trying to find his voice here. This was his sort of first film experimenting with different themes and ideas, and I think he really accomplished something fantastic here in a way. It's a very surprising film and it's shocking at times, but I feel captivated by it. Not a lot happens, it's really a fly on the wall, look at this family, but I was really connected with this film. There was something about that I couldn't turn away, no matter how extreme the scenes transpired or what happened. I'm learning with Yorgos's films to just go with them and not try and get answers to everything and just experience them without judgment. And that's what I tried to do with this film, even though it was confronting at times. But I thought this was a great and interesting film, and if you're interested in The Favourite or any other his films, I'd definitely check this one out. It's a little harder to find, but it is very worth your time. Final verdict. Look, if you like something that's a bit different, a bit controversial, and starts to ask questions about particular things or dealing with particular themes, you might enjoy this. I don't think it's going to be for everyone. It is shocking and surprising, and some people might be turned off by it, but I was just really intrigued by it. I think he's a very unique artist today, and he's making some very interesting and fun and entertaining films. And if you liked The Lobster or Killing of a Sacred Deer, then you may enjoy this film as well. I'm going to give Dogtooth 3.5 out of 5. I liked what I saw here. It was very confronting and shocking, and I was surprised by how much I enjoyed this film, but it was also repulsed by certain things and how I just allowed myself to go with it and experience it. I'm very interested to see what he does next after The Favourite, actually. So like I said, I'll be continuing on reviewing his films. The next film I'll be reviewing is The Lobster and then Killing of a Sacred Deer. Anyway, that's all from me today. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed what you saw. If you did, please hit subscribe down the bottom. Follow me on Facebook. Otherwise, until next time, enjoy the movies.